The operating room was colder than I had ever imagined. I was lying on the narrow table, the bright surgical lights making me squint, the steady beeping of the heart monitor reminding me that time was running out. A clipboard with my signature sat on a tray near the nurse. I had agreed to give my kidney to my oldest son, Caleb, because everyone told me I was his only chance. Through the glass window stood my daughter-in-law, Aubrey, her arms folded tightly, her eyes fixed on me with a sharpness that cut deeper than any scalpel. Next to her were her parents, Victor and Elaine, nodding as if this moment was already theirs to claim. Dr. Aaron Whitfield, the surgeon, gave a calm nod to his team. The anesthesia syringe gleamed. Everything was set. Just as the nurse stepped forward, the door burst open. The hinges screeched, and every head in the room turned. A gust of hallway air rushed in, rattling the trays of instruments. My 9-year-old grandson, Theo, stumbled inside. His sneakers were muddy, his school shirt wrinkled, his chest heaving as though he had run through the entire hospital to get here. Clutched in his small hand was an old cell phone with a cracked screen. "Grandma," Theo shouted, his trembling voice echoing in the frozen room. "I need to tell the truth about why Dad really needs your kidney." The room fell into silence so complete that even the monitor's beeps sounded deafening. A doctor dropped a pair of forceps that clattered against the floor. Aubrey slammed her palms against the glass. "Do not listen to him," she screamed. But Theo did not look at her. He looked straight at me, eyes filled with fear and determination, as if the weight of our family's truth rested on his small shoulders. "My name is Lorraine Parker. I am 67 years old, and for most of my life I worked in a school cafeteria on the east side of Cleveland. I know the smell of hot lunches, the sound of clattering trays, and the rhythm of working hard until my legs ached. Now my days are quieter, spent in a small bungalow with my husband Frank. He has been in a wheelchair since a stroke 10 years ago. I cook his meals, push him outside for air, and sit with him in silence. His hand is often cold, but I hold it anyway. I raised 2 sons under that same roof. Caleb, my oldest, was always the strong one, tall and broad, with a laugh that filled the room. He chose construction work, and for years I believed his body was built to withstand anything. Mason, my younger son, is quieter. He works with his hands as a plumber and electrician, fixing what is broken without fuss. He comes by often, carrying bread from the corner bakery or tightening a loose bolt in the kitchen. When Caleb brought Aubrey home, I tried to welcome her with an open heart. She was polished, well-spoken, and seemed devoted to him. Neighbors told me I was lucky. I believed them. For a while, I felt proud that my son had built a family of his own. I could not have guessed how quickly that picture would crack, or how the very people who smiled at me would one day corner me with demands I never expected. The first time I heard the words kidney transplant, I felt my knees weaken. Caleb had been losing weight, his face drawn and pale. Doctors explained that his kidneys were failing and that time was running short. I sat beside his hospital bed, clutching his hand, whispering that I would do anything to help. I thought that meant sitting with him through dialysis or making sure he ate properly. I did not realize it meant something more. One evening, Aubrey arrived at my house carrying a thick folder of medical reports. She spread the pages across my dining table as if she were teaching a class. She pointed to numbers, circled lines in bright ink, and said clearly, "You are the only compatible match. This is not just an option. It is your duty as his mother." Her voice was calm but sharp, leaving no space for hesitation. Not long after her parents came too, Victor leaned back in my favorite chair, his voice steady. "A mother's sacrifice is the highest act of love. There is no debate." Elaine nodded, her eyes narrowed. "Everyone will know if you refuse. They will say you let your son suffer." I felt their words press against me like heavy stones. I wanted to ask questions, to pause, but the way they stared left me no room. Caleb, too weak to stand, whispered from the couch, "Mom, I trust you. I know you will save me." His hand was cold in mine, and I nodded without speaking. At that moment, it no longer felt like a choice. It felt like an order written in stone. In the days that followed, life moved in a slow, heavy rhythm. I woke early each morning to take vegetables from the small garden behind my house and bring them to the neighborhood market. The coins I earned barely covered groceries, but I could not sit idle. When I came home, I washed clothes, mended torn shirts for neighbors, and fixed simple meals for Frank. His wheelchair creaked every time I pushed him down the narrow hallway, the sound echoing in my ears long after we stopped. Each afternoon I carried food to Caleb's hospital room. I spooned broth into his mouth, brushed the damp hair from his forehead, and told him stories about the neighbors to make him smile. He would squeeze my hand with what strength he had left, whispering that he was grateful, but in his eyes I saw exhaustion deeper than his years. At night, when the house grew quiet, I sat under a dim lamp and sewed by hand. The steady pull of the thread through fabric was supposed to calm me, but lately every stitch carried a question I could not silence. Was I strong enough to go through with the surgery? Was I doing this because I wanted to, or because I no longer believed I could say no? I told myself this was what mothers do. We give until there is nothing left. Still, a knot of unease began to form inside me, tightening with each passing day. The first red flag came on a quiet afternoon at the hospital. I walked in with a container of soup, and just as I reached Caleb's bedside, I saw Aubrey drop something into his glass of water. It was quick, almost invisible, but I caught the faint glimmer of a small pill sinking to the bottom. When she noticed me watching, she smiled too quickly. "Just a vitamin," she said, her voice light, but her hands were tight around the cup and she did not let me touch it. Later that evening, I asked Caleb's doctor, a man with kind eyes and thick glasses, if any new supplements had been prescribed. He flipped through the chart and shook his head. No changes, only the standard regimen. My stomach sank. Why would Aubrey lie? At home, I began noticing more. A white plastic bottle tucked under a napkin on the nightstand. No label, only blue pills inside. The way Aubrey insisted on washing Caleb's dishes herself, checking every plate as if she were hiding something. And the late-night phone calls, her voice low, hurried, drifting through the back porch window. One night I heard her say, "Don't worry. Everything is on track." When I asked who she was talking to, she startled, then laughed nervously. "Just a friend from work," she replied, but her eyes slid away from mine. I told myself I was imagining things, that stress was making me suspicious, yet each detail clung to me like a thorn I could not pull free. Deep down, I knew something was not right. The question was whether I had the courage to face it. Theo, my grandson, was only 9, but he saw more than most adults. He often came to my house after school with his backpack slipping off one shoulder, his hair messy from running. He would sit on the floor with the little toy cars I had bought him at a yard sale, making quiet engine noises as he pushed them across the rug. His laughter usually filled the room like sunlight, but lately he had grown quiet. One afternoon, as I chopped vegetables for dinner, Theo looked up from his game and asked, "Grandma, what if someone makes another person sick on purpose with medicine?" His voice was soft, almost afraid of the words leaving his mouth. My hand froze on the knife. I forced a smile and answered, "Sometimes medicine makes people feel worse before it makes them better." But inside, my heart skipped. Why would a child ask that? Theo shrugged and kept rolling his car, but I noticed the way he gripped it tighter than usual. Before he left, he pulled an old cell phone from his backpack. Its screen was cracked, the corners scratched. "I found this in Mom's drawer," he whispered, then quickly tucked it back. "It has weird things on it. I don't really understand." I wanted to press him, but I didn't. I just hugged him before he ran off. Still, his question lingered in my mind long after he was gone. A child's words had opened a door I had tried to keep closed, and behind it was a truth I was both desperate and terrified to see. My younger son Mason had always been the steady one. He fixed leaky pipes, patched wires, and never spoke more than he needed. But when he looked at me with concern, I knew it was serious. One evening he came by with his toolbox, saying he would check the flickering light in the kitchen. As he worked, he lowered his voice. "Mom, I've seen some things that don't sit right." He pulled out his phone and showed me photos he had taken near the hospital parking lot. The images were blurry but clear enough to make my stomach turn. Aubrey stood by her car, handing a small bag to a man in a black cap and jacket. In the next photo, the man slipped her an envelope. The exchange was quick, but Mason had caught it. "I followed her because I didn't trust how she's been acting," he said. "This isn't normal." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. "Are you sure?" I whispered. Mason nodded, his jaw tight. "I've also seen pill bottles without labels in Caleb's cabinet. She hides them. I don't know what's in them, but I don't like it." I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was mistaken. But the memory of Theo's question, the strange pills, and Aubrey's lies pressed against me. Mason's voice softened. "Mom, please don't rush into surgery until you're sure. Something is wrong here." His words hung heavy in the room. I felt torn between the desperate need to save my son and the growing fear that the truth was darker than I dared admit. A week later, I called the family together in my small living room. The yellow light from a single bulb flickered against the old wallpaper. Frank sat silently in his wheelchair near the window, his eyes half closed but listening. Caleb lay weak on the couch, his face pale. Mason leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching. Aubrey arrived with her parents, Victor and Elaine, who immediately settled into the best chairs as though the house belonged to them. I poured tea to calm my nerves, though my hands shook so badly the cups rattled on their saucers. Aubrey looked at me with expectant eyes, her voice already trembling with false gratitude. "Mom, we just need your final decision. Caleb doesn't have time to wait." Victor leaned forward. "A real mother doesn't hesitate. You must do what's right." Elaine added sharply, "What will the neighbors think if you refuse? That you let your son die?" The words pressed against me like a weight I couldn't lift. Caleb reached for my hand, whispering, "Please, Mom. I know you'll save me." My throat closed, but I nodded. "I'll do it. I'll donate the kidney." The room erupted. Elaine clapped her hands. Aubrey covered her face and pretended to cry. Caleb managed a weak smile. But Mason slammed his palm against the table. The teacups jumped. "No, don't you see? This isn't about saving Caleb, it's about control. Something's wrong." His voice shook with anger. Silence filled the room, everyone staring at him. I couldn't answer. My decision was made, but my heart felt heavier than ever. That night, I sat alone at my desk, writing a simple will, unsure if I would live to see another dawn. The night before the scheduled surgery, the hospital halls felt colder than usual. I had been admitted for final tests, and the smell of disinfectant clung to everything. As the nurse wheeled me down a corridor toward pre-op, I caught sight of something through a glass pane that froze me in place. Aubrey stood near the vending machines with her mother, Elaine. Beside them was the same man Mason had photographed, the black cap pulled low over his face. I watched as Aubrey slipped an envelope into his hand. He tucked it quickly into his jacket, and the three spoke in hushed tones before disappearing into the stairwell. My chest tightened. I wanted to shout, to demand an explanation, but the nurse kept pushing my gurney, unaware of the storm raging inside me. My fingers dug into the thin blanket as though holding on could keep me from falling apart. That night, in the hospital room, I lay awake listening to the hum of machines and the occasional footsteps of staff in the hall. I thought about Caleb, pale and frail in his bed, unaware of the shadows moving around him. I thought of Mason's warning, Theo's frightened question, and the hidden pills. Every piece pointed in the same direction, but I still clung to hope that I was wrong. If I was right, the truth would be unbearable. If I was wrong, my hesitation could cost Caleb his life. I closed my eyes, torn between fear and duty, waiting for morning to come. Morning came, and with it the weight of finality. I was wheeled into the operating room, the harsh white lights glaring down on me. The anesthesiologist prepared a syringe, his voice calm as he explained each step. Dr. Whitfield stood at the head of the table, reviewing charts with a steady hand. Through the observation glass, I saw Aubrey, her arms folded, her gaze sharp, signaling for me to sign quickly. Elaine stood close beside her, whispering encouragements I could not hear. It felt like I was on display, a pawn in a game I barely understood. The nurse placed a clipboard in front of me. My hand trembled as I signed, the ink smudging across the page. I felt as though I had just sealed my own fate. The heart monitor beeped steadily, louder in my ears than ever before. I closed my eyes, whispering a silent prayer. Then the doors banged open. A rush of air swept across the room, rattling the trays of instruments. Gasps filled the space as Theo darted in, clutching the cracked cell phone in his small hands. His sneakers squeaked against the floor as he ran to my side. "Grandma," he cried, his voice trembling yet clear. "I have to tell the truth about why Dad really needs your kidney." Everything stopped. A surgeon froze mid-step. A pair of forceps clattered to the floor. Dr. Whitfield raised a hand and said firmly, "Hold everything. Let the boy speak." Through the glass, Aubrey pounded on the door, her face pale with panic. "Don't listen to him. He's just a child," she screamed. But Theo ignored her. He unlocked the phone and pressed play. The room filled with Aubrey's whisper, cold and unmistakable. "After the transplant, the test results will be perfect. She won't dare refuse." A hush swept over the room. Nurses exchanged glances. Dr. Whitfield's eyes darkened. Theo lifted the phone again. This time a video played, showing Aubrey in the parking lot, passing a bag to the man in the black cap. Elaine's voice was clear. "With the post-op data, we can sell it overseas." The truth struck like thunder. Dr. Whitfield's voice cut through the silence. "Stop all preparations. This surgery is over." Call security now." Chaos followed, but it was not the chaos of surgery. Nurses stepped back from the table, their hands still gloved, their faces pale with shock. The anesthesiologist set down his syringe, shaking his head. Dr. Whitfield stood tall, his voice sharp. "This is no longer a procedure. This is an investigation." He ordered security to seal the room and collect the evidence Theo had brought. Aubrey's screams echoed through the glass as 2 guards restrained her outside. Elaine clutched her daughter's arm, her face drained of color, while Victor whispered frantically to anyone who would listen. But no one moved to help them. The authority in Dr. Whitfield's tone had shifted the air. This was no longer their stage. I was wheeled to a recovery bay, not for surgery but for safety. Mason rushed in minutes later, his shirt damp with sweat, his eyes blazing. He took my hand firmly. "It's over, Mom. You don't have to give them anything." His voice cracked, but his grip was strong. Down the hall, I could hear Caleb's confused voice, weak but rising. "What's happening? Why are they yelling?" My heart broke knowing he had trusted a woman who had betrayed him so deeply. Yet I also felt a flood of relief. The operation had been stopped before I lost more than I already had. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe, even as tears blurred my vision. The truth was heavy, but at least it was finally out in the open. The days after the operating room confrontation felt like walking through the ruins of a storm. Police arrived at the hospital, collecting the phone and video Theo had brought, interviewing staff, and securing the strange bottles Mason had photographed. News spread quickly. Reports spoke of a trafficking scheme in which Aubrey and her parents were working with outsiders to push experimental drugs overseas. The kidney transplant was never about saving Caleb. It was about using his surgery as a cover to gather data and profit from his suffering. Caleb was devastated when he learned the truth. He lay in his hospital bed, tears sliding down his thin cheeks. "Mom, I didn't see it. I trusted her." His voice was weak, filled with shame. I held his hand and whispered, "What matters is that you are still here. We will fight this together." Slowly, with dialysis and new treatment, he began to recover. Mason became my steady rock, visiting every day, making sure I ate, making sure I rested. Theo, my little hero, carried himself with quiet pride. He had spoken up when adults were too afraid. Even Frank, who had been so silent for years, managed to squeeze my hand one evening as if to tell me he understood. In the quiet of my home, I sat down with my old diary and wrote, "Blood is not the only proof of family. Truth, courage, and love are stronger bonds." I nearly gave up everything, but the bravery of a child reminded me that silence protects no one. If you are listening, and if this story reaches you, remember, ask questions, trust your instincts, and never let fear decide for you. And if this message touched you, share it, like it, and tell me in the comments where you are listening from. Together, we keep the light alive.